Hi, hello, and welcome to our webinar on the single source of truth based on Atlassian Jira and BigPicture. I'm very excited to see so many attendees turning up on time. And I think we'll start, and anyone who joins us who is welcome to just step in while we go forward. Just to let you know, this whole webinar is being recorded, so if you at any time want to come back to any part of what will be said here today, you will be free to do so. We will be sending out a link to the recording after the webinar. And we also welcome you to and encourage you to ask any questions that may come up in your mind during our presenters' talk. But we will be answering these questions in the Q&A session, which will follow the webinar. So if you would kindly patiently wait, we'll be happy to facilitate any answers once the presentation is ended. Okay, I would like to hand over the microphone to our speakers right now. And Marcin, over to you.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I know we have people from all over the world, so welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to this webinar. A couple of words about myself. My name is Marcin Cieślicki. I'm an enterprise Agile coach with over 15 years of experience in project management and Agile. I've participated in Agile initiatives as a Scrum Master, as a product owner, currently also as a release train engineer in SAFe. I'm a SAFe program consultant. And today I will tell you, together with Marek Lewandowski, what it is that we use Jira and BigPicture for, how we use it. We're going to do a little bit of a practical approach. So most of the things I'm going to tell you comes from what we do on a daily basis. Now, before I head over to Marek, just a couple of words about who we are as SII and as Agile and Atlassian Competency Center. First of all, we help our customers deliver business agility to their customers, right? We are a platinum solution partner for Atlassian, which is the most commonly used platform for Agile tooling. Therefore, we are also a one-stop shop, helping our customers not only deliver business agility, but also help them start on their journey, help them understand where they are, where they want to be, prepare that transformation roadmap with them, go through that transformation roadmap, implement that transformation roadmap, and support them all the way through all the steps of their Agile journey. So our scope of services is quite packed. We offer consulting, implementation, maintenance, process optimization, business optimization. We work on international projects supported by our experts who have multiple years of experience and certifications in Scrum, in Agile, in Kanban, in SAFe, and many other Agile and traditional project management frameworks. Thank you. Over to you, Marek.
Okay, thank you, Marcin. Thank you for having me here. Hello, everyone. My name is Marek Lewandowski, and I'm a product implementation consultant at BigPicture, the leading portfolio product and project management system for Jira and part of Appfire family. So our portfolio of products is quite big currently. My background is mainly change management, risk management, as well as software assurance of safety critical systems. And if we could switch to the next slide. And a few words real quick about BigPicture. So we've been around since 2015, and our products, which we are very proud and are used most, and mostly our flagship product, BigPicture, are used by tech frontrunners in more than 130 countries worldwide. That amounts to over 30,000 teams on all continents who use BigPicture, BigPicture Enterprise, or Big Gantt to manage their work and evaluate their productivity to the next level. Thank you. Thank you, Martin.
Okay. Folks, today's webinar is about understanding how we should work together with big chunks of data, right? So before we move on to the present, not only to the presentation, to the PowerPoint slides, but to the real stuff, I'm going to show you how we work. 3 disclaimers I want to make. First of all, for obvious reasons, we cannot show real data of our real customers because, well, our contracts forbid us to do so. But second of all, what I'm going to show you is a practical approach. Okay, what works for me, what has worked for me as an RTE, as a Scrum Master, as an Agile coach. And I understand there may be different configurations, different ways you can work with. That's perfectly fine. I know it. But I'm going to, within the hour that we have, or even less than that right now, I'm going to try to convey a couple of key messages. What works best? What's the practical approach? What are the top tips and hints that you should take into account? And third of all, the third disclaimer is that we treat Jira or any other application lifecycle management tool as a master source of data, master tool for putting in the data. Okay, so BigPicture is mostly for us to read, to visualize that data on a different level for different audiences. Of course, we can interact with that data using BigPicture as well, and this is what I will show too. But this is not for us, at least for me, what I have used so far. This is not the main way of working. The main way of working is that we put data into Jira or any other ALM tool, and we display that data in BigPicture to understand, to track our progress, and to filter out that data, use only what we really need. So it's really the question of understanding how to gather not a huge amount of data, but how to gather the right data, how to filter out the data that we really need to track the progress of our safe implementation on a different level, for a different level of stakeholders, right? Either be it management, leadership, our stakeholders, or teams. They all have different needs. BigPicture pretty much serves them all. BigPicture helps us really get the right answers to the questions that most commonly occur. That's why that single source of truth is really so crucial, so important. Because if we don't have the right set of data, if we don't have completeness and accuracy of the data, it's not going to work out, right? So this is kind of a prerequisite. If you want to use what we're going to show you today, make sure your teams actually use the application lifecycle management tool, put that data in there, commit to doing that. This has to come from an organizational culture that you work with. Okay, if it doesn't, make it happen. But this is probably a topic for a different webinar. Okay, just a short introduction of the setup that I'm going to give you. Usually we work with around 5, 7 to 8 Agile teams within an Agile release train. And this is around 60, 80 to 100 people that are gathered in multiple Agile teams that are combined, aligned together with a single program backlog, with a single mission and vision to define, build, validate, and release the end product, release the business value delivery. So therefore, all these folks work together in a coordinated manner. And let me now go to the system itself to show you how we use it, to show you how we use it for different groups of stakeholders. Okay, so we basically use 4 different views for this. Okay, let me get my arrow in here. We basically use 4 different views in here. First one is the program backlog, where we can see all the hierarchies, where we can see the full hierarchy of our backlog from even from the epic, which is even the portfolio backlog, even from the epic through the features, through the stories. So we fully understand what entails a particular work component. So that's one thing, right? So I have all my epics. I can drill down to that epic. I can drill down to that epic to a certain set of features, and then I can drill down to a certain set of stories or any other issue types I choose to. Okay, that's the first important item we have in here. The second important item that we use, for example, with discussions between the management and leadership on our weekly meetings that we have as art leadership alignment, is to understand the status of a particular feature. Okay, so within the PI, we're going to say, okay, I have a theater control modes and events iOS. That's my feature that I want to deliver in this PI. If this is the case, okay, I want to see where we are. Well, we have an eighth of this still to do. An eighth of that is still in progress, but 3/4 has already been done. Okay, is it good? Is it bad? Well, it depends when we are. If this is the last day of the last iteration within the PI, probably we're lagging behind a little bit. But if this is somewhere midway through the PI, probably we could say, yeah, we're good. Okay, so this is really important to understand those percentages. What's the percentage of the delivery for a particular feature? This gives you this view gives you an instant look into this. It's a great way to talk not only to leadership, but also to product owners, product managers, project sponsors, or program directors or team managers. Right. The other way we use this particular view is to understand the story points, understand the capacity of the art for the whole PI. As you can see, every epic consists of multiple story points that are an aggregated set of story points for particular features. Likewise, every feature has multiple user stories within it, and therefore we aggregate the story point estimations for those user stories to understand what's the estimation for that feature. So a bottom-up estimation is a great way for us to get a good understanding what's the effort for a story, for a feature, for an epic, for the whole PI, for the whole Azure release stream. Okay, and last but not least, we also use this view to understand the WSJIF and understand the relative prioritization between the features. This is the custom field that we used in Jira. We can actually show what's the weighted shortest job first. So how important a particular feature is versus any other features. We use it usually on a feature level to understand where the top 10 or 15 features that we want to take for the next PI. So we fully utilize the prioritization technique that SAFe also recommends using BigPicture. And again, that data comes from either Jira or BigPicture, but we can always display it here, have it on our screen. Mark, would you like to add anything to this?
Yes, thank you. So that view allows you to present a lot of useful information, and that's really great. I think it's worth mentioning that the issue hierarchy or the structure is generated by the app. We're very flexible here. Of course, you can report on various artifacts. You can also add the same fields multiple times as columns with different aggregations to compare, for example, your initial estimation versus the actuals. However, if you are interested in automating that or calculating a formula or to calculate the deviations, then some additional tools would be required, like, for example, our Power BI, Power scripts or custom fields available in our portfolio. Thank you, Martin.
Okay, thank you. So just a last comment from my side, I think. This is a set of data that I use. This is a set of data that works for me. Of course, you can modify the amount of columns. You can modify the type of the columns you want to see. You can modify the data based on different quick filters that you have. You can define your own quick filters, but this is usually what works best, right? Have all the features, all the stories, have WSJIF, have the status done, and this is color coded. Have labels that assign that work to particular teams as well. And it really works out great. Okay. The second view I want to show you, the second mode I want to show you is the PI objectives mode. Okay. So as you can see, we have 3 PIs for our art in our setup right now. The first PI has already been delivered, has already been closed. The second PI is in progress. The third program increment is still to be done. So in this particular situation, we are somewhat midway through the second PI. Now, what you can see in here, first of all, we can see all the objectives in for particular teams, either main objectives or for Team Alpha, Gamma, Team Omega. And this is specifically the view I use for the discussion with the product owners and product managers on POPM sync that I have on a weekly basis, and the view that I use for the Scrum of Scrums meeting. Now, the POPM sync for me lasts literally 15 minutes. It's shorter than Safe recommends, but I want to save people's time. So the only thing I'm asking here is, folks, is this still a valid list of PI objectives? Is this still a valid list of business values, right? Is there something that is a top do we need to change? Do we need to adjust priorities? Is there something that pops up that needs to get done, right? That's what I would talk about with the product owners. Plus, of course, the candidates for the next PI that I'll get back to in a second. Now, when it comes to the Scrum Masters, when it comes to the Scrums, this is where the discussion gets really interesting. As you can see for the objectives, what we have is those colored vertical lines, if you will, and they show pretty much the RAG status of a particular objective, right? So at a glance, I can easily see which objectives are on track, which is the green, are somewhat at risk, which is the yellow light, or are really delayed or will not be delivered, which is the red light. Okay, so what I do ask as a release train engineer, what I do ask my Scrum Masters to do is to make sure this is always up to date and updated on a regular basis. And definitely we talk about that during our weekly Scrum of Scrums. So I'm going to talk about what is going on for particular objectives. Now, having 45 minutes for that meeting, again, this is not enough time to go through every single objective. That's why, again, I will point that out. That's why I make sure that all the objectives, if I double click on that, if I go into these positions, all the objectives have their RAG status set up. Okay, and if there is a RAG status that is not green, I expect an associated work item that will be a risk. Okay, so if I have a thermostat control panel and this is yellow for some reason, I want to understand what that reason is. We can either use some notes. Say I could type something in. Say delay due to vendor, right? Vendor issues. Let's say, right? This is something I could type and everybody will see that. Now, on the other hand, what I can also do is I can relate that work item to a particular component, right? So specifically, I can relate that to a particular story, to a particular risk. And this is exactly what we did. Delays in thermostat component, as you can see, this is a risk. So at a glance, if I drill down, at a glance, I can see why this particular objective is not green. Okay, and this is important for us because we can focus on getting back to green, discussing this get back to green path, right? So in the 45 minutes that I have with my Scrum Masters, what I work on is discussing all the non-green PI objectives, plus discussing all the top priority objectives, the ones that have planned business value of 10 or 9, right? We mostly don't have time to discuss anything else. Now, the practice that I use, and I think this is quite useful, is to make sure that all your uncommitted objectives by default are yellow. Well, because for some reason they got uncommitted in the first place, right? The team has not committed to delivering them during the PA planning event. So for example, weather forecasting and communication panel. Okay, well, dependency with external vendor of weather communication panel. This is the reason why the team has uncommitted from this objective. And if we go to the risk later on, I will show you where that risk is, and I will show you how we can work on that particular risk. Now, if I see kitchen appliances IoT, and I see that this is a green objective that is uncommitted, then probably throughout iteration number 1 of that PI, the team has resolved or mitigated the risk or the reason why it uncommitted from that objective in the first place. It stays as an uncommitted objective, but we have a good understanding that the team is on track to deliver this uncommitted objective and therefore increase their PI predictability measure as well. So again, if you want to have that discussion with the Scrum Masters or the product owners, product managers, make sure that data is accurate, right? So I push that responsibility or push that accountability to the Scrum Masters and to the product owners, okay, and to the product managers. But if we do have it, we can actually have that great conversation based on big picture. Now, one of the reasons why we really use big picture for this also is that it is a single source of truth for us. So not only can Scrum Masters go into this, not only product owners or product managers, but I can have the management, the enterprise architects, the project sponsors go into this as well, right? To understand where we are. Therefore, we limit the amount of status meetings, because for every customer, and I've worked with this for 6 different customers so far, and with every customer, that was the same case. Every customer said, you know what, we have a lot of status meetings. How can we reduce that amount, right? Because we meet pretty much every day and talk about the same thing. Jira or any other ALM tool and BigPicture is a great answer to this. Letting you create an environment where actually people can go in and understand what's the deviation from the plan, understand what's the plan, okay? So just to wrap it up, we're not talking, I'm using this PI objectives view to discuss only deviations from the plan. We're not going to discuss if something goes according to the plan, because this is exactly what we discussed during the PI planning event. If everything goes according to the PI planning event, no reason to discuss it any further, right? If there is any deviation, any new obstacle, any roadblock, any impediment, any change of priorities, this is what we're going to discuss on our ArtSync meetings. Now, last thing is the main objectives. Look at that one. That's an interesting one as well. You might ask yourself, okay, why do we have these? The main objectives, the swim lane, serves as a source for the PI roadmap, right? So I can also understand what's coming up in the future PIs for us, right? Now, I got only 4 PI objectives defined for this moment. And of course, they are not allocated to a particular team. This is what will happen during the PI planning event. But already we know what's going to happen, or what are the expectations for the future in terms of the focus of the work for the art. Okay, so I think this is also a great way to manage your PI roadmap. Mark, would you like to add anything to this view?
Thank you. Yeah, so as you've mentioned already, this is a great communication tool, and it really allows all interested parties to understand where you're currently at and where you're going. Of course, you can adjust the timing horizon. That's one of the things. There's also a bit of automation, so it works in a similar way to your sprints in Jira. When you close a time box such as the PI or an iteration, your objectives, the uncompleted one will be automatically moved to the next time box and so on. But I also wanted to mention that something that is related to what you said. It's all about the benefits for the users. It's the reducing of the time required to communicate all these things, first of all. But if we take it a step further, imagine that we're using quite a basic example in real life. The number of teams that will be presented on that board can reach 10s up to 100. I've worked with customers where 60, 80 teams is nothing unusual. And in that case, of course, also the performance of the tool is very important. And I would like to assure you that performance initiatives are something that we're constantly working on to deliver even better performance, so that that working with the tool is as fluid as it possibly can. Thank you, Martin.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now, this is, of course, not the only view we're going to use when we have an ArtSync, when we talk with our art stakeholders. For example, if we use Scrum of Scrums, if we participate in a Scrum of Scrums meeting, we're also going to talk about the program board, right? The program board, meaning the dependencies between different Agile teams within the Agile release train. So it might look a little overwhelming, but believe it or not, this is a very simplified view of what we have in real life. Usually the program board entails 5 to 8 different agile teams, and we have, I don't know, 5, 7, 8 times the amount of dependencies as you can see in here. So while I understand this view may be a little unclear, this is actually the best way to show the dependencies between different teams. And those dependencies between different teams, remember, are one of the major benefits of a PI planning event, right? So when I talk to Scrum Masters, this is the second view I always go to, asking them, okay, we are done with iteration number 2.1. Are all the dependencies done? Okay, let's go through them. Yeah, one by one, they are done. Great. Okay, we're midway through iteration number 2. Are all the dependencies delivered? Well, no, not yet. There is something to do, but it's a successor. Okay, that makes sense. But all the predecessors should at least be already in progress, right? This is the discussion we would have. Now, you can notice different colors of arrows, and let me give you an idea what that is. So basically, first of all, there are those green arrows. Those green arrows are representing the most optimal dependencies we can have. So dependencies that span multiple iterations. A predecessor is in iteration number 1, for example, and then a successor is in a later iteration. Okay, so that's the right way to go. That's the less risky way to manage your dependencies. Now we've got those yellow arrows, which represent a dependency within the same iteration, right? So if I double click, you're going to see, if I click on a particular work component, you're going to see that dependency. So this is a risk by definition, right? We have a dependency within the same iteration, which means that we really have to focus on making sure that this PP290 gets done as early as possible, so that it unblocks PP292 in our case. Okay. Now you can also see that some of these dependencies are fine line, some of these dependencies are somewhat dotted lines, right? So the fine line dependencies represent soft dependencies. Now the dotted lines represent hard dependencies, where we have a specific end-to-end type, where we have a specific relation set up in Jira as well. So PP7 has to be done after PP34 for that matter. Now, one more trick that we use here in Jira, and let me show you how that works. So as you can see, I can interact with those dependencies. So let me, for the sake of the discussion, move that PP290 to iteration number 3. Notice what's going to happen. The arrow changed its color. It's right now red. The red arrow represents those dependencies that are incorrect, that are illogical from the delivery point of view. So obviously, well, the predecessor cannot be delivered in the later iteration than the successor, right? Now we can also filter this out using the dependencies and just untick the correct. It's only going to show us the incorrect dependencies. That's a useful tool. That's a useful filter if we really have like dozens or even hundreds of dependencies, right? We can focus on those that are incorrect. Incorrect meaning only red. So the yellow dependencies, the dependencies within a single iteration, are still correct. Okay, so please note that as well. So but again, we can also we can swiftly interact with those dependencies, moving stories or dependencies between different iterations, and this is exactly what's happening. This is exactly what's happening with our way of working when we talk to the Scrum Masters. Okay, we do that on a really regular basis. Okay, so what we do is, for example, I'd ask my Scrum Masters, hey, okay, is that going to happen, right? And yeah, the Team Alpha Scrum Master would say, hey, that's not going to happen in iteration number 2. We don't have any more capacity for this. Okay, let's move it to iteration number 3 if we can, right? And if I move it, as you can see, the arrow already changes the color as well. All right. Now, another thing I wanted to show you are those numbers. What are these numbers? These numbers represent the work progress as defined by the amount of story points delivered versus the amount of story points that were planned to be delivered in our iteration. Okay, so as you can see, iteration 2.1, well, it's 100% already delivered. Iteration 2.2, 16 out of 26. But if I move this one back to iteration 2.2, it's going to be 60 out of 31. So it also automatically calculates the progress of the iteration, taking into account all the stories that we have, all the estimations for those stories, and all the work that has been done. In order for that to be precise, of course, we need a prerequisite of having all that data complete and accurate, right? So we need all the stories to be estimated, and we need all the stories to be in the right status, right? So if ventilation performance adjusted to the outside weather condition has been delivered, then let me open it up, and I can directly open it up from BigPicture to Jira, and let me mark it as done. I'll mark it as done. I'll get back to Jira. I'll get back to BigPicture. I'll refresh the screen. And this is done. Right, where is it? That was 66. 66, and this is done. All right, and again, as you can see, the number of story points in the iteration has changed. So we can quickly, easily manipulate those that information. We can quickly make sure that is always up to date, and it's also a great way for leaders, for art leadership, for project sponsors to get in, hop in, for the team managers also to hop in to understand how their team is doing. Team Alpha, 8 out of 13 story points, 62. Team Gamma, finished. Team Omega, 83% done in this iteration. Right? So we know that from BigPicture at the very first glance. Now, if you want to take a look at that data without having to go through all those arrows, kind of try to filter it, you can just collapse all swim lanes, and you're going to have that information at a glance, right? So you can easily see which teams are working, which teams still have something to catch up on. Okay, so we use it not only for Scrum Masters, but we use it for team managers to get that understanding, to get that information. Why? Because we collect that information. These are the metrics that we collect every iteration, and we show those metrics at the end of the PI during the Inspect and Adapt workshop, where we analyze those delivered story points versus planned story points, and delivered number of stories versus planned number of stories. We analyze that information on a team-by-team case and for the whole art to compare against each other in time, compare against different PIs, right? To see whether there's a trend, to see whether there's progress or improvement. Mark, would you like to add anything to this view?
Yes, thank you. So there are a couple of things I would like to mention. First of all, it's all about providing a clear overview of all your work. And as you said, you know, having a huge network of dependencies might obscure the picture a little. Or even more in some cases if we multiply it by the number of tasks. So the good news here is, besides that, you can control whether you want to show only the correct or incorrect dependencies or the risky ones, as you have mentioned, that with the upcoming releases you will be able to collapse the dependencies. So that's one step that will take us closer to, again, handling bigger amounts of work, bigger amounts of cards. So again, the performance is being improved. On top of that, you will be able to squeeze in more cards, up to 3 columns within a single time box. And I think it's also worth mentioning that Besides tracking progress here, it helps also in planning the capacity. It connects where you can connect BigPicture with other Jira instances or Trello boards, so your teams might also be using some other tools, and we know that also happens. And the last thing I wanted to mention real quick about improvements is that with the upcoming versions, you will also see additional swim lanes for your initiatives and your epics, mainly in that case, which span over multiple iterations or even multiple PIs, so that will again provide a little bit more of transparency about what you are working on. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, folks, if you work with SAFe, you know that program board also shows which features will be delivered in a particular iteration. And this is exactly what we use the same view for. So instead of just showing all the stories and dependencies between the stories, we can also use the same view to showcase which features will be delivered in which iteration by which team. Of course, we can put that both on the same view, but I usually prefer to keep it separate, to keep it clean, unless a particular feature is dependent on some other work, like feature number 67. Okay, you could see that feature in here because it is dependent on one of the stories from the other team. So it's here on this view, but on this view of the epics, or sorry, of the features, we will not see it. We will only see all the features that are being delivered by every team. And this is a great view for product managers, for product owners, for the system architect, for the business owners, for any other stakeholders, or management or leadership, for the people that pay for the art as well, to understand when what will get delivered. Right. So in order to get there, of course, there are a couple of configuration setups you need to do. So you need to uncheck the show tasks with dependencies, still keep the show full scope option on, and use a quick filter. We use a quick epics and features only quick filter to show only these. If I uncheck this, hey, we're going to see quite a lot of work that the teams are doing, right? So what we want to see is epics and features only. Okay, so we use two different views, two different ways. There are two different ways we use the program board for two different views for different audiences. Okay, so this view is more about working on a team level, working with the Scrum Masters, great source for the team managers to understand what their progress of the team is. This is more of a business view or the architectural view to understand all the features and all the enablers that are delivered in a particular iteration within the PI. Now, the last view, the last mode I work on most is the risk mode. Okay, now this mode shows only program risks. So by definition, these are all the risks that pertain to more than a single Agile team within the Agile release train, right? So dependency with external vendor of the weather communication panel. That probably is something that, it spans across multiple Agile teams or external teams that support external vendors that support the Agile release train as well. That's why it's a program risk. Now, what you can see is in here is a very simple matrix that shows you probability on the y-axis and consequence on the x-axis. All right. Now, again, BigPicture, I really like BigPicture because you can quickly and easily interact with all that data in there. So if I see that the 857 feasibility study of the surround system in the basement needed beforehand, if that risk, for example, has a higher consequence, okay, I'll just drag and drop it. That's it. It's going to automatically get updated. Let me pull it down. Okay. Yeah, we could work out our way around this, but basically this is the way things work, right? So we can easily update all the risks. If you want to know more, if you want to see that risk in more details, of course, you can click the plus. You're going to see a bigger picture of what information we have. Now, what do we have in here? We have the ID, we have the status, we have the assignee, who that work is assigned to, who reported that work. We have a description, and we have a roam strategy, right? So again, this is a custom field that we created in Jira that we can show in here so that everybody understands whether that risk is resolved, owned, accepted, or mitigated. Okay, this is the view that I usually use. Sometimes if there is a due date for a particular risk, we're also going to see that date, not a problem, right? Of course, we can either just left click, or let me open that in a new tab. I can click on that issue, I can click on that risk and just go directly into that risk, and I'll see all that information in here, and I can work my way through this, okay? Or I can just work my way from here, right? I can change the assignee, I can change the summary, right? I can do all those things. On top of this, I can also directly add my risks from this panel, right? So I can go to click the plus and create a new issue or add an existing issue, right? I can create a new issue. Let's say that's going to be, that's going to be a test risk. I'm not very creative with this. Yeah. And then I can see all the fields I should be seeing, right? Risk consequence, right? Okay, yeah. Let's see those. Let's see those, and let's say it's a low consequence. This risk is mitigated with a medium probability. Okay, let's create that. Yeah. It's probably in the other box that we would be able to create it. But basically, this is a very simple way to create those risks as well. We usually use Jira for that, though, but if we need, we can always create those risks. So whenever I talk about the current status of the work, about any impediments, any roadblocks that we have to achieving our PI objectives, what's hindering us from achieving our business value, providing the planned business value, this is where we want to be. This is what we want to talk about, right? And if there is anything outstanding, anything that we missed, we can just put it in there. And this work later on, if I get back to the objective, this work gets associated with the objectives, right? Implement test automation, lack of DevOps. This is our risk, lack of DevOps, right? And I can go to that risk, and I can see some comments in here. I can see some work in here, right? Arlene will discuss with Tom and Rachel. All right, well, yeah, it's on Arlene. Okay, she'll do that. And then we can have that discussion on an operational level. So we use this tool. We use the setup of Jira and BigPicture for us to really make sure that we don't have to answer the same questions over and over and over again. If you want to understand where we are, my dear manager, my dear leader, my dear project sponsor, my dear business owner, product manager, team manager, go to BigPicture. You have access to that. You have access to that view, and it really works great. If you want to talk more, then let's have a discussion, or let's use Jira for the comments. So we refrain from using emails, except for getting notifications from Jira, of course, and BigPicture. But we use Jira and BigPicture as the single source of truth, and it gets us all the answers we need. Therefore, we reduce the amount of meetings that we have to a minimum. So we have our art sync, we have our art leadership meeting that is on a weekly basis. That is a half-an-hour meeting, and we have a coffee and learn session for all the Agile art team members to maybe inspire them, to maybe show what we can improve on as well. And that happens once every 2 weeks, once every iteration for half an hour as well. That happens, by the way, after the system demo. Mark, would you like to add anything to this risk view?
Thank you, Martin. Yes, I think a little. I would like to add maybe What is useful here is really the color coding, just as Martin, you have shown already in the risks module, in the roadmap or the objectives module, where the colors actually tells us, where we are, where we're at. There are more things that you can do here, of course, and depending on the risk management techniques, whether they are simplified or a bit more advanced, big picture, the risk module is definitely will definitely help us. But at the end of the day, what is important is that we again communicate what is, which items, what are the risks, and what is the level of risk. The level of risk is indicated with the color coding here. Here it is done automatically, and I think what's the most important is we also have gadgets for these modules. Not all of them at this point, but more are coming. So we have already the risks module, for example, the roadmap or the objectives module will be released soon, and also our cloud users will also be able to not only add gadgets to their dashboards, but also to Confluence pages. And what in my opinion is really awesome is that if I remember correctly, by the end of the year, users will be able to access the gadgets on Confluence pages, or even add it to your websites using tokens for use for authentication. So without even logging in, you will be able to access this information. Of course, authentications through tokens means that the security standards are kept and applied as well. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you. All right, folks. So since we have 15 minutes left and I want to have around 10 minutes for the Q&A session for us, let me come to a brief wrap up, because these 4 modules are the core of what we use. Of course, it's not all. Of course, we could dig deeper into the configuration, and this is usually what happens as well. But I wanted to convey kind of the key message, how we use Jira and BigPicture. What are the practices? What are the modules? And what are the specific tips and hints that we use for this in order to make sure this is a single source of truth, and that people can find all the answers to all the questions that they have in Jira and BigPicture, instead of emailing you, having a couple of times a day for this. Okay, so what are the major benefits of using Jira and BigPicture for us? First of all, is the real-time progress check, right? So as you could have already seen, the data that we change in BigPicture or in Jira refreshes on a real-time basis. So whenever we do that, we have it always up to date. So either I can change something in BigPicture in Jira, or I can just drag and drop some stuff in BigPicture, and that works as well. Second of all, and something maybe I have not mentioned, most of the safe implementation engagements that I run as an RTE or as an implementation consultant are global engagements, which means we have teams and people and stakeholders from multiple time zones. In most cases, this is Asia, meaning in most cases India, plus Europe, plus the Western Hemisphere being either US, Canada, or Brazil, in my case. All right, so we need to make sure we have a tool that allows us to have an effective asynchronous communication, right? Because people will not, we will have what 2 hours of a shared time, right, every day. So in order to make sure everyone has the right answers at the right time, we can use Jira and BigPicture to make sure all the answers are there. So whenever my folks over in Brazil, whenever they wake up, whenever they start their working day, if they have time to look at BigPicture, let's say at 2 p.m. their time, they can see it. They're going to have data that is live, that is updated. Okay, and that's great. And if they have any comments, they're going to put them in there, and Asia is going to see them. I'm going to see them in Europe on the spot, just like that, right? So it's a really great tool for asynchronous communication, and asynchronous communication is something we can't run away from, right? With the globalization, with the teams in different time zones. And again, the third thing is reducing the amount of status meetings, right? I literally had architects approach me saying, team architects approach me saying, hey, Martin, you know what? I have a meeting a status meeting every day where I have to repeat the same stuff over and over and over again. And I said, okay, let's start using BigPicture as a tool that shows all the data in there, and then we'll ask people to just go in. We'll give them access. We'll give them access to the right views. We'll give them the links. We'll ask them to just go there, go and see what that data is. And if you need that conversation, have an individual conversation later on. Let's not talk about anything that is going according to the plan. Let's talk about anything that is a deviation from the plan. Okay, and that significantly reduced the amount of status meetings because all the information is in Jira and in BigPicture. As simple as that. I know it sounds simple, but it really is when you really push it. Really push it hard, show the organization how much time an organization can save, right? An hour meeting for 8 people is 1 main day of work, right? And the question is, what would it take for your organization to approve an expense, let's say, of $10,000, right? Probably you'd have to go through a couple of steps of the approval process. Now, if you want to organize a meeting for 15 people for an hour, that's 2 days of work. That's probably more than $10,000. All right. And nobody asks you for any kind of financial approval for that. So it's easy to waste money on unnecessary meetings. Jira and BigPicture help you save that money. Now, a couple of tricks before we go to the Q&A session. Again, first of all, make sure that all your art team members use the ALM tool that you use, either Jira or any other application lifecycle management tool as your primary collaboration tool. So teams work. In our case, team works in Jira, but teams can also work in multiple Jira instances and in other ALM tools as well. Second of all, digitalize that PI planning tool, that PI planning board as soon as you can. What does it mean? I have had like 11 PIs right now, right? 11 PI planning events. This is my experience in terms of facilitating those events. And I can tell you, of course, we can facilitate those in BigPicture and in Jira, but I find it way more convenient for the teams usually to facilitate those in specifically designed visual collaboration tools, right? There are multiple, you can Google them up. Now, what happens is that we need to make sure that whatever the teams figure out during their PI planning event gets translated to the digital tool as soon as possible. Now, with the configuration that BigPicture provides and Jira provides, we can easily do that on the spot. And maybe I will get back to that later after just to show how we can work with this, how we can work with those dependencies. I've shown you an easy way to add some risks in there. We can easily add dependencies between stories. We can easily add dependencies between features, between a story and a feature. Not a problem, right? Use BigPicture for all the art sync events, for the product owner, product management sync, for the Scrum of Scrums. Don't use anything else. No PowerPoints, no emails, no chats whatsoever. Everything is in BigPicture. Single source of truth. All right. And again, focus on talking about the deviation of the plan, because your product owners and product managers earn quite a lot of money. And you don't want to spend an hour of their time discussing about something that we already know, discussing about something that we've already discussed during the PA planning event. Talk only about what's new, what's changing priorities, changing adjustments, okay, changing scope, maybe putting something up there on the list of the PI objectives. Or in terms of Scrums, talk about different dependencies, roadblocks, impediments that prevent you from delivering your PI objectives. Use RAG status for your PI objectives. It's a great visual tool to quickly, at a glance, like it takes 10 or 15 seconds to get a good understanding of, are you on track with your PI objectives or not? Both committed and uncommitted ones. And if you're not, then you can associate the work to manage those risks, associate those risks to particular PI objectives, just like we had in this picture here, right? I have my associated work. I know why a particular PI objective is not green. Therefore, I understand the go to green path. That's it from our side. We got 7 minutes left, and I think we can go to the Q&A session. Magda, over to you.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Marcin. Thank you, Marek. It was very interesting to hear you share all these valuable tips and tricks. Before we go straight to the questions, we have 10 questions lined up. So I think it's proof to say that you have delivered a lot of food for thought for our audience. I'd just like to make a quick announcement. We have prepared a short survey asking for your feedback during this webinar. We would like to hear what you think about our performance and get to know you a little bit better in terms of your needs with regard to perhaps future webinars that we will be delighted to hold featuring the Atlassian tool suite. So I've just shared a link to the questionnaire. We will also be sending out the survey after this webinar. So if you don't have time and you just want to stay tuned, that's fine. We will come back to it later. And now moving on to the Q&A, I have the first question was asked at the very beginning of your presentation. And I think it was referred to the first view, Marcin, that you were showing in BigPicture. And the question is, can we see the dependencies between features on this view? If you'd like to take this one.
Yeah, okay. Folks, bearing in mind that we have 5 minutes, I think it's safe to say that we will not be able to answer all the questions directly here live, but we will take up all the questions. We will answer them in writing as well, and you will all receive that information back. Okay, so but in the meantime, yes, let me go to those questions that we have. Okay, this is an epic view. Now, what we can do, I mentioned that we can easily create that dependency. Let's, for the sake of the discussion, say 263 is a predecessor of 267. Okay, which means I can just drag and drop it, and that's it. As much as it takes, right? And again, if I move it over to if I move this one, sorry, I can't move this one because it's done. It's done. I have to, if I move it over, you're gonna see, okay, if I move it even further, you're gonna see the change in the arrow as well. So it works fine, perfectly. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Mike, and I'll just publish it right now. And the question is the hierarchy epic feature user story also shown in the Jira backlog view? By default, Jira shows the epic user story level only. If you want to implement the feature level, I would have to add user stories as tasks to the features, and hence they do not show up there. Can you comment on this?
Yes, I can. What we use is we use a specific issue type called feature or say feature that is between an epic and a story, right? So underneath the story, all the tasks or the subtasks, we keep it as it is. We just add a specific issue type for this. So again, those are kind of the details of the configuration. We could also ask a specific issue type for the risks, for the objectives. It depends on the customer, but yeah, we ask and we add the issue type feature.
One more thing, if I may, real quick. The hierarchy is generated by the app, but it's based on a issue link. So as you can see, we have this custom issue link is parent of, is child of, and this way, BigPicture is capable of generating any hierarchy, almost any hierarchy that you can imagine.
Awesome, guys. Thank you very much. Moving on, we have another question, and that is as follows. Can we see the dependencies between different projects in the portfolio and have different projects, there's the word boxes in brackets, on one portfolio Gantt?
Yes, we can see dependencies between different projects and portfolios. Let me show. Let me show the program backlog. Let me show. Click on the overview here.
So Martin, if I may address this question. So there are different ways, and actually, what Martin is showing you right now, if you can go, it's the command center, or the very high level overview of all your initiatives, all your projects, all your products. Right now, it's limited to the safe art that we are looking at, but you can, yes, if you can click the timeline, we can also present it on the timeline. However, answering your question, whether cross-project dependencies can be shown between, any project that you just add to the scope of this safe art, or you can have a different container, separate container for that purpose. More than that, you can also create links between projects themselves, not at the issue level, but at the project themselves. Of course, they will not sync with Jira, since there's no such a thing as a link between projects. Now, how to do that? That's a longer story. So we will be more than happy to answer that in the follow-up emails. But long story short, you will need to specify the scope and most likely create a separate container for your works, for your projects.
Awesome. Thank you, Marek. More questions coming up, and here's the one I'd like you to answer now. Can we resurface big picture reports and plan on Confluence pages?
Yeah, so again, let me answer this one. Right now on Confluence pages, we are capable of, we have four gadgets. Gadgets basically show you whatever you see in the, let's say, in the overview. More or less, it depends on the gadget, but in case of the Gantt, which is frequently used as the roadmap, you see exactly what you have in the Gantt module. In case of the list of all your initiatives, then the view is a bit more limited. The risks will show you the risks, but with the collapse cards, and roadmap and board gadgets are coming soon. So more will be available by the end of the year, according to our roadmap. And as I said earlier, cloud customers will be able to use these gadgets very soon. Here, work is almost done.
Awesome, thank you, Marek. We are stepping outside the time boundaries that we have set for ourselves at the very beginning, but we are very excited to see that you found our content interesting. And if you have time to stay with us, we'll be happy to answer the questions that remain. And here comes the next one, which is, can you allocate resources to boxes, assigning, for example, person 1 on 50% and person 2 on 100%?
Yes. Okay, let me take that on. If you go to Teams, you can have Team Alpha, you can have particular people in particular teams assigned from a start date to an end date with a specific availability, with a specific set of skills. Okay, now in most cases, I'm not using that because we have a fixed set of people that are within our art, and we can move people around the art. That's okay. Move people around the teams within the art. But yes, if you want, you can specifically assign people to particular teams at a specific availability, 30, 50, 100% with skills with end dates.
Awesome. Next question, and here it goes. Can a portfolio of projects be, sorry, I missed it somewhere. Can a portfolio of projects be managed in BigPicture?
So let me take this one. Yes, it's, the tool is designed to organize your work into portfolios, whether these are projects, products, or managing using different frameworks and methodologies. Now there are different ways that you can, in which you can do that. Starting from a simple, high-level reporting at the portfolio level to a more advanced view where you can actually decide what information is presented, what metrics you want to use, and what reports you want to generate. So again, if you're looking for more detailed instructions, I would recommend reaching out to us, Software Plant, or to our partners, and we'll provide you all the necessary instructions.
Awesome. Thanks, Marek. I think we have another question here, and this is, within these views you presented, what are key metrics your stakeholders use to compare plan to actuals and find out what is not going as planned? I think this would be something Marcin could take.
Yes. Yes. So within the view that we've presented, if I go to this view, we usually just keep it to a minimum when it comes to the number of metrics we want to collect. Why? Because we ask the teams to do this, or we want it to be automated, and we don't want it to take a lot of time for the teams, right? So what we collect is usually a kind of an index, a ratio. So we're not going to ask them, hey, what is the number of planned stories? Hey, what is the number of planned story points? Or what is the number of delivered story points? Because those numbers can be easily manipulated, if you will, right? If you want to deliver more stories, you just slice the stories to a thinner grain. If you want to deliver more story points, you change the definition of your story point, if you will, right? So we need to work in a little bit different way. What I usually ask the team for is the ratios. What is the actual delivery versus what you planned to deliver? Okay, so what you see in here, 19 out of 31. Now, we're not really interested whether it's 19, whether this is 31. What we're interested is this percentage. Are we between 80 and 100%? Because that predictability is way more important than productivity in SAFe and the approach that we promote. Now, of course, there are specific metrics that we also measure, like the number of bugs, number of critical risks that we had, number of iteration goals that we managed to deliver versus the number of iterations goals that we had. And of course, for the PI objective, this is the planned business value, committed planned business value compared to actual business value for all the PI objectives. So this is the PI predictability measure as per SAFe definition. Now, what you see here is the automated calculation that BigPicture does. We can calculate that in a couple of different ways, but basically we usually ask for this calculation to be counted by business value. So I can see that Team Alpha delivered 65% of their business value, Team Gamma 50%, and then Team Omega delivered 114%. So in the first PI, all the teams had something, to improve on. The first two, Alpha and Gamma, they have to improve on their predictability because they kind of overestimated, under-delivered. On the other hand, Team Omega was way too conservative in their efforts. Altogether, we are 77% as an agile release train. For the first PI, I would say that's really good, but we want to measure that trend across different PIs to understand whether we are getting to the 80-100% range.
Okay, thank you, Marcin. Next question is about combining BigPicture with Easy BI. Can we use Easy BI reporting along with BigPicture?
So maybe let me answer this one. BigPicture does integrate with Jira, synchronizes a lot of information, but there is some data that is stored by BigPicture. So that means that it will not be available in the BI, for example, the capacity planning screen. Now, that does not mean, of course, that it's not going to be doable in future, but I would kindly ask you to, let us know what type of reports you're expecting. Just for your information, we are currently working on new reporting capabilities. So a new reporting module will see more charts in the side panels that will provide you with more data. And of course, we're integrating with other products in our Appfire family portfolio. But here, work is in progress, and I think that at this stage, it is a bit too early to provide you with any concrete informations. So
Fair
just
enough.
reach out to us. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Moving on, I think this we actually have a double question lined up. And this is, what are the major challenges of implementing this toolset in a safe environment, and how much time does it take to implement this toolset? I think Marek, you could take this one. Marcin, sorry.
Okay, major challenges. I think the first major challenge is the organizational culture, to make sure that everybody actually uses an ALM tool, that they treat it as their primary collaboration tool. Okay, because still I see a lot of customers, a lot of teams saying, hey, we work in a little bit different way. It's a little more specific. We can't just put all that information in Jira. We do a lot of that information on one-to-ones. But again, if those folks talk on a one-to-one basis and the rest of the art does not know about this, does not understand the implications, then we don't have the full picture here, right? So at least put a comment in a story, at least put a risk or impediment if you see one, okay? And as a release train engineer, as an Agile coach, this is the major challenge that I see, that I keep pushing the teams to really start using the ALM as the primary and single collaboration tool that we can actually translate later on into BigPicture and get everybody to get the right answers. In terms of the configuration, it's usually not that complicated. Of course, we try to simplify things. We try to adjust to what we can do, but I mean, there are different specificities for our customers. We can use different custom fields. We can use different issue types. Been there, done that for quite a couple of customers. It works out quite well. It's just a matter of time. And Magda, the second question was about how long it takes, right?
How much time does it take to implement this approach? Based on your experience.
I'd hate to give you the consultant's answer, but yeah, it depends, right? It depends on a couple of parameters. First of all, it depends on where the organization already is. Do you use an ALM tool or not? If yes, well, probably it's going to be quicker. If not, well, you first have to establish a culture, establish that process of using the tool. How many teams do we have? How dispersed the teams are, right? How specific that work is. So how much configuration do you need? Do you have any custom needs that we need to work on as well? Do you have any specific reporting needs or specific group of stakeholders that have specific communication needs? So altogether, it takes from the short version would probably be a couple of weeks to really a couple of months, right? Maybe 2 or 3 weeks for the simplistic version, to quite a couple of months for the more complex one, if you will. But that's just a kind of a rough estimation with the set of parameters that I can give you that determine that rough estimation.
Yeah, but you're always welcome to reach out to us and get an in-depth view of your specific case that Marcin will happily provide.
Yeah, so the way we usually work with is with our customers is that we first need to understand where we are with the customer and what the customer really needs, right? And we understand the gap between the current state and the future state, determining how much work there is to be done. Based on that, we give an initial estimation of how much time it's going to take, right? So we're not jumping on into delivering the tool and making kind of trying to fit the tool, trying to fit your process into the tool, right? The tool serves you as the customer, serves you as the business, right? It's not the other way around. So we have to understand what the business needs are and then adjust the tool, adjust the process accordingly. So that takes usually that kind of diagnostic takes 2 weeks, around 2 weeks usually, and then depending on the complexity, it's either from a couple of weeks to a couple of months on delivering.
Awesome. Guys, we don't want to take too much advantage of your attention, so I think we'll be wrapping up. We have time for one more question, one last question, and if you allow me the freedom to pick one. Here's a question from Pavel. How how do you plan your capacity of your developer teams, for example, for next quarter or projects at people level in practice? Can you somehow relate to this?
Okay, so in practice, I mean, BigPicture has that resource module that we can use, and it's a great tool in certain configurations, in certain instances, but I have not covered in here on purpose, right? Because we're not using that usually in Safe. In Safe, we have a fixed cost, fixed capacity for all the teams for a particular PI. Now, what do we do with that capacity is a different story, right? So I can move around priorities. I can move around even people between different teams working on a cross-collaborative approach. Okay, so basically, we work with the team managers. We get that information from the team managers. We gather that information on a feature level and on the team level rather, and then that gets translated into story points, right? We could use BigPicture for that. If you want to, for example, understand how many developers will you have available, or how much capacity of development will you have available in 4 months from now. This is something we can, of course, use, but I have not seen a frequent application of that in Safe in my instances. Yeah.
Right. I think that's it for today. It was a pleasure to have you all here, and I would like to once again thank you for your attention on behalf both of C and Marcin, as well as our partners, the team behind BigPicture and Marek. My name is Magdalena Zacharczuk. It was. I hope you found our presentation and webinar interesting, and please stay tuned for more upcoming content from our side. Our plan is to hold a similar event perhaps in December, so look out for an invitation in your email box. And once again, thank you for your time today.